Hello, everyone, and welcome to our virtual Mishnah Berurah here. We are holding in Mishnah Berurah Chelik Beis, and we will be learning today in Yirtzeh Hashem Daf Samach Amud Aleph. First, we need to complete Daf Nun Tes Amud Beis. We are continuing to learn Hilchos Netillas Yadayim, and we pick up today on Nun Tes Amud Beis, Siman Kuf Samach Beis, Sif Yud. So, Yirtzeh Hashem, we will be completing Siman Kuf Samach Beis. I would like to say that we will begin and complete Siman Kuf Samach Gimel as well. Let's see how it goes. So 3 lines from the top, Nun Tes Amud Beis, Sif Yud. Says the Mechaber, very common issue. If somebody has some kind of a wound, a cut or some other kind of wound on his hand, Uritia, and he has a bandage. The Ramah says over here in the parentheses, Pirish in Gutu Balaz, a retia is a bandage, we learned this earlier, a bandage with some sort of a salve on it, some kind of a schmear. Maybe in the old days they used to use some kind of fat or some kind of oil, some kind of ointment to protect the wound. So nowadays it could be an antibiotic ointment, some such thing, that's the salve. But it's not really the salve that we're concerned with as much as the bandage itself. So somebody's got a wound on his hand, Uritia, and he has a bandage, Pirish in Gutubalaz, Aleha. He has a bandage on the wound. Now, the bandage is going to be a chatzitza, right? It's something it's miut, but ostensibly it's makpid. It's not something that you really want to have there. Yes, you need it there right now, but as soon as you could get rid of it, you want to get rid of it. That's considered miut umakbid. That's not considered miut ve'enoi makbid. That's miut umakbid, even though I need it there now, but ultimately I don't really want it there. Says the Mechaber, what do you do in such a case? Dailoi sheyital sha'ar hayod shaloi b'makam heritia. What this person could do is, he could wash the Netillas Yadayim on all of the exposed parts of his hand and not wash the retia. So he could leave the bandage on. So let's say a person has a Band-Aid on the finger over here. Really what he could do is he could wash the entire hand around the Band-Aid. Okay? Now, that's very critical. You cannot get water on the Band-Aid, like the Mechaber says right now. V'tzarech li zaher shelo yiga b'retia. But if you're going to do this, you have to make sure that you pour water on the entire hand up to and not including the retia. You cannot get water on the retia. Now, why can't you get water on the bandage? Because of what we learned yesterday. Remember what we learned yesterday. If you have a tzrar or a kisem, if you have a pebble or a splinter of wood on your hand, and you pour mayim rishonim on your hand, and some of the mayim rishonim touches your hand, becomes tameh from your hand, and then it goes on to the tzrar or the kisem, right? Now you have a real problem. Why? Because when you're going to wash mayim shniyim, if that water that's on the tzrar or the kisem goes back onto your hand, it's going to be re-matame your hand. The mayim shniyim cannot be matar that water, because since that water is on the tzrar or the kisem, or today in Sif Yud, if you have mayim rishonim on the bandage, mayim shniyim can only be matar water that's on the hand. It cannot be matar water that's on the bandage. It can't be matar water that's on a tzrar or a kisem. Now, when that water goes off the retia, it goes off the bandage, and it goes back onto your hand, it's tuma haba mimakam acher, and now it's going to be matame your hands. And now you're up a creek without a paddle. What you have to do is you need to dry your hands, and you have to start Netillas Yadayim again. So again, what the Mechaber is saying over here is, somebody has a Band-Aid on his hand. What does he do for Netillas Yadayim? So May Ikar Adin, says the Mechaber, really what you could do is you could wash the entire hand and not wash, leave the Band-Aid on, and not wash the area where the Band-Aid is, but you also must make sure that you don't get any water on the Band-Aid. Because if you get any water on a Band-Aid, you can have a problem. that water comes back off, it goes onto your hand, it's going to be rimatame your hand. So let's see it inside again. Technically speaking, it would be enough for him. He could wash the entire exposed part of his hand that's not covered by the retiyah, but he has to make sure that no water lands, none of the mayim rishonim lands on the retiyah. Why? So that the water should not then come back off the retiyah, the yatamu ayad, and be re-metame the yad. So that's the first eitzah of the Mechaber. Now, I'll just give you a heads up for the Mishnah Berurah. We're talking about a case over here specifically where the type of wound that's covered by this bandage is a type of wound where you cannot take the bandage off by the meal. Because should you take the bandage off, it would cause you a tremendous amount of pain. Or it would cause you significant pain. I don't have to use the word tremendous. Therefore, since you can't take the retiyah off, we're not chayshish that you might take it off in the middle of the Suda, and you might be eating with an exposed part of your hand that did not have Netillas Yadayim. So again, if you have a bandage on your hand, and technically speaking, you could remove that bandage without experiencing any significant discomfort, then this halacha doesn't apply. Then you must take the bandage off and wash the Netillas Yadayim on the whole hand, or at least cover it with a mappa or something, but you cannot go ahead and leave it on and wash the Netillas Yadayim around it. The only time we have this eitzah that you could wash the Netillas Yadayim around the bandage, that's where we're not chayshish that you're going to take the bandage off in the middle of the meal, because it would cause you significant pain. So then we say, all right, leave the bandage on, and you could wash around the bandage. But in order to do that, what you really need to do is, you need to wash the Netillas Yadayim around the bandage without getting any water at all on the bandage. So you've got to get the water mamish up to the Band-Aid and not on the Band-Aid. Now, what are the chances of that happening? Almost nil. So, therefore, the Mechaber gives a second eitzah. What's the second eitzah? We can already guess what the second eitzah is. Or, says the Mechaber, Yishparich Revius Aliyat Kachas. Make sure that when you pour mayim or rishayim on your hand, you use a revius or more. If you use a revius or more, then we don't have to worry about tamei mayim or rishayim, because there is no tamei mayim or rishayim. Since you washed with more than a revius, the tumah vanishes, and you have no tamei mayim or rishayim. Let's take a look here at the Mishnah Berurah. Is cut in Samach Zayin Uritia. Says the Chavetz Chaim Ayin Siman Kuf Samach Aleph Sif cut Dal be Mishnah Berurah, where if you look back over there, the Mishnah Berurah just identifies what a retia is. It's a bandage with a salve. Is cut in Samach Ches Dailoi explains the Mishnah Berurah right away. Ma'wi she'ena yachal lahasira machmas ke'ev hamaka. We must be talking here in this sif about a wound that does not allow you to remove the bandage. That's what the Mishnah Berurah told us earlier in Kuf Samach Aleph Sif Kat and Daled. Over there, the Mishnah Berurah told us that over here in this Siman, where we're talking about a bandage, we're talking about a bandage that cannot be removed. Therefore, you could. That's why you could do this eitzah of washing around the bandage, and it's not considered netila lachatzoin. What does he mean? It's not considered netila lachatzoin. So we had a halacha earlier where we said you're not allowed to wash part of your hand and then let it dry and then wash the other part of your hand, so that you're doing the Netillas Yadayim in two shots. You're not allowed to do that. Why? Because that's netila lachatzoin. You're not allowed to do a partial washing of your hand and then do another partial washing of your hand on the other part of your hand and let it combine to one washing. And the Mishnah Berurah explained because it ain't derech netila bakach. That's not called Netillas Yadayim. Netillas Yadayim is in one shot. Says the Mishnah Berurah over here, really, when we have this shiloh of the bandage, if you're telling me that you're allowed to wash the whole hand around the bandage, why isn't that a problem of ein netila l'chatzayin? You're not washing the entire hand. You're not washing the part that's under the bandage. So why isn't that a problem of ein netila l'chatzayin? Again, in the case where you're washing one half of the hand and then washing the other half of the hand, we said that doesn't work. Why doesn't it work? Because each netila was not a valid netila. When you wash the first half of the hand and not the second half, that's not a valid netila. In order to be a valid netila, you have to wash the whole hand. So too, when you wash the second half of the hand, you didn't wash the first half of the hand. So again, it's only a partial washing. A partial washing ain't netila l'chatzayin. That's not an effective washing. Says the Mishnah Berurah, so too over here. You have a bandage. You're washing the whole rest of the hand. Why don't we say ein netila l'chatzayin? You're only doing a partial washing, and it shouldn't be a netila. And for the Mishnah Berurah, over here we're talking about a case where you cannot remove the bandage. Since you cannot remove the bandage, because it will cause you significant pain if you do so, says the Mishnah Berurah, ulakach dailoi, that's why it's enough if you wash the rest of the hand and not the part covered by the bandage, ve'ein zum netila l'chatzayin, and this is not a problem of ein netila l'chatzayin. Why? Kevet she'eina yochel litel chetzi hasheni, because over here you cannot wash the part underneath the bandage. You can't wash it, because in order to wash it, you have to take off the bandage, and that would cause you significant pain. And therefore, it's comparable to somebody who had a finger amputated, had a finger cut off. If somebody had a finger amputated, we don't say that he can't wash the Netillas Yadayim because he's only doing half a netila. Why? Because it's impossible to wash the missing finger. It's missing. So too over here. When somebody has a bandage that cannot be removed, then that part of the hand is considered as if it's not there. And therefore you could wash the whole rest of the hand without washing the part under the bandage. But the Mechaber said, Sha'ar hayad, you could wash the rest of the hand. Says the Mishnah Berurah, V'im eina yochel litel yad of klal machmas chayli. Let's say somebody has some kind of an affliction on his hand where he cannot wash the Netillas Yadayim. There's something wrong with his hand. He has some kind of acute dermatitis. I don't know. He has some kind of skin affliction going on his hand, and he cannot wash his hands because of a sickness. Says the Mishnah Berurah, in that case, Yichrach Yadav B'mapa, when he wants to wash, he has to put on gloves. Literally, Yichrach Yadav B'mapa means he has to wrap his hands in a cloth so that he'll eat with unwashed hands, but they're not exposed. So there's no concern that he might come into contact with the food. The Mechaber said, if you're going to wash around the retia, around the bandage, tzarich li zaher, we have to take care, shelo yiga b'retia. Now literally those words mean we have to take care that you do not touch the retia. That's not what it means. Says the Chavetz Chaim, tzarich loymar, what this means to say is, shelo yigu hamayim b'retia. What we have to be concerned with is that the water, the mayim harishonim, does not go onto the bandage. And he brings this down for the Pri Megadim. V'hainu, says the Chavetz Chaim, the chol shenishpak mayim harishonim k'tzas al retia, because if you get any mayim harishonim onto the retia, ein mayim shniyim yichaylim l'taram. If you have mayim harishonim that comes into contact with the hand and then goes onto the retia, so now you've got a hand, the hand is tahar, it's got residual mayim harishonim on it that's tameh, and some of that residual mayim harishonim that's tameh is on the retia. Now you're going to pour mayim shniyim onto the hand. So the mayim shniyim are going to be metaher all of the mayim harishonim that are on the hands, except for the mayim harishonim that's on the retia. The mayim harishonim that's on the retia, the mayim shniyim cannot be metaher. Then what's going to happen to that mayim harishonim that was on the retia? It's going to come off the retia and go onto the hands. When it goes onto the hands, it's going to be rimatami the hands. Not only is it going to be rimatami the hands, it's going to be rimatami the hands, and it's going to be rimatami all the mayim that's on the hands. What are you going to do now? Pour more water on the hand? What's that going to do? What's that going to do? all of that tumah is tumah haba mimakam acher. You can't be betarit. So you have to dry your hands and start all over again. Ein mayim mishti bichel l'taram. V'chayzra macha kachamayim sh'ala retia ala yad. Now the tamei mayim rishonim from the retia is going to go back onto the hand and be rematami the hands. Ukamay b'sif tesla el. This is the same halacha that we learned yesterday in Sif Tes about the tzrar and the kisem, linyan tzrar v'kisem. V'zeu shesiem ha'mechaber shelo yichazru. And that's what the mechaber is explaining over here, that the concern is that the water, the tamei mayim rishonim, should not come off of the retia, go back onto the hands, and be rematami the hand. So just again, in a nutshell, a person has a bandage on his hand. It's a bandage that he cannot remove because it will cause him significant pain. Since he can't remove it, we're not chayshish that he might remove it during the Suda. We're comfortable that he's going to leave it on during the Suda. If he was able to remove it, we would have to be chayshish that he might take it off in middle of the Suda. If we would have to be chayshish that he might remove it in the middle of the Suda, then we can't be matir him to do anything. Just looking over here, back at Siman Kuf Samach Aleph, in Siman Kuf Samach Aleph, Sif Aleph, on Nun Hey Amid Beis, it's in the middle of Sif Aleph, where the mechaber is giving examples of a chatzitza. One of the examples that the mechaber gives of a problematic chatzitza is a retia. He says retia sh'al b'sarai. If somebody has a bandage on his hand, it's a problematic chatzitza. Now, the Mishnah Berurah over there in Siman Kuf Samach Aleph asks, what do you mean a retia is a problematic chatzitza? Back over here, what we're learning today in Siman Kuf Samach Beis, we say that you could leave the retia on your hand and you could wash around it. So the Mishnah Berurah over there explained already. He said back at Siman Kuf Samach Aleph, we're talking about a retia that could be removed. Since it's a retia that could be removed, we have a concern of a chatzitza. You can't let it stay on the hand and you can't wash around it. You have to wash the part of the hand that's under the retia. Why? Because he might remove the retia. And if he removes the retia while he's eating, he's going to be eating with exposed skin on his hand that's unwashed. So back in Kuf Samach Aleph, we were talking about a retia that could be removed. It's a problem of a chatzitza. You must wash the part of the hand that's under the bandage. Over here in Kuf Samach Beis, we're talking about a retia that cannot be removed. Since it's a retia that cannot be removed, you don't have to wash the part of the hand that's under the retia. So the first eighth of the mechaber over here is wash the entire hand up to the retia, and don't worry about the part that's under the retia. But, says the mechaber, that's a very risky proposition, because if you get any water of the mayim rishonim onto the retia, it's going to create the problem of siftes. It might come off the retia, go back onto the hands, and be rimatami the hand. And then the mechaber gave a different eitzah. The mechaber said the second eitzah is, don't worry about all of this. Just make sure you wash with more than a revius. If you wash with more than a revius, you could pour the water onto your whole hand, including the retia. Go ahead, get the retia wet. So mine will come off the retia, go back onto the hand. So what? If you wash with more than a revius, the mayim rishonim are not tamei. The tumah went puff and it vanished. It's gone. So now you have no concern. It says the Mishnah Berurah Ayin Aleph, Al Yishbach Revius, She'az Lo Nitba'u. Ritzon Eloymar, what the mechaber wants to say is, Va'afilu b'yechazra mayim akakach, even if the water for the mayim rishonim will come off of the retia and go back onto the hand, ein chashash b'davar. There's no concern. The Kasra Achronim write, the eitzah zu yafa yoyser me'ofen harishon. The second eitzah on the mechaber, to make sure to wash with more than a revius, is a much more preferable eitzah than the mechaber's first eitzah. It would be impossible to wash mamish up to the retia, va'ala retia lo yagiu amayim, but no water should touch the retia. How are you going to do that? Oid kasu, the Achronim also write, Tetoiv likroich ala retia achar netila kishabal lechel. It would be proper that after you wash the Netillas Yadayim, and now you want to sit down to eat, you should wrap over the retia besmartut lavan v'naki, a clean cloth, lechasei zuamas retia, to cover up the dirt, the soil of the retia. He's not coming over here from Hilchas Netillas Yadayim, really. What he's saying is, we're talking here, you have a retia on your hand. So, okay, we solved the problem of the Netillas Yadayim. You'll wash with more than a revius. But now, Pashut is not mentioned. You're going to sit down to eat a Suda with a dirty retia, with a retia that has some kind of a medicinal salve on it. Say the Achronim, wrap it in a nice clean cloth when you sit down to eat. Kasva Achronim, the Achronim write, Im nafla haratia b'sei chasuda. Oh, what happens? Again, we're talking about a bandage that you can't remove. So you went ahead and you used one of the mechaber's two eitzes. Either you were a magician, you washed with something with a very narrow spout, and you washed mamish your whole hand up to the retia, and you didn't get any water on the retia. Or you used the mechaber's second eitzah, and you washed with more than a revius. Now you sit down to eat the suda, and guess what? In the middle of the suda, the retia falls off. Now you have a hand with exposed skin that's unwashed. Say the Achronim, Im nafla retia b'sech suda tzarich litol shenis. You have to wash a new Netillas Yadayim. Kedin mappa. The same way we're going to learn later that in a case where you're allowed to eat with a mappa, with a cloth wrapped around your hand, instead of the Netillas Yadayim, she'em heiser hamappa aser lechol kain bazeh. We're going to learn later in Kuf Samach Gimel that under certain circumstances, hopefully we'll see it today, under certain circumstances, you're allowed to eat without Netillas Yadayim as long as you wrap your hand in a mappa. Okay, so what happens if you wrap your hand in a mappa and then in the middle of the suda the mappa comes off? Well, you can't eat. As long as your unwashed hand is exposed, you're not allowed to eat. So either you have to rewrap your hand in the mappa or you need Netillas Yadayim. So too over here. In the case of the retia, if you solved the issue of the Netillas Yadayim with the retia with either one of the mechaber's eitzes, but then in the middle of the suda, the retia fell off, so now you have exposed, unwashed skin, you're not allowed to eat. So either you have to wash the Netillas Yadayim, or you have to put on a new bandage, or you have to wrap a mop over it, but you can't eat. As it is, you cannot eat. Okay, let's close out Siman Kuf Samach Gimel. Let's go back into the Shulchan Aruch. The last phrase over here of the Siman are the words of the Ramah. Says the Ramah, Neitlim mayim rishonim. You're allowed to wash mayim rishonim. Now, when the Ramah says over here mayim rishonim, he does not mean the way we've been using mayim rishonim until now, meaning the first pour of mayim rishonim in contrast to the second pour of mayim shniyim. Over here, he means mayim rishonim in contrast to what we know as mayim achronim, that you wash after the suda before benching. Says the Ramah, noitlim mayim rishonim, when you wash for the Netillas Yadayim, you're allowed to wash bein al gabe keli. You could wash in your kitchen sink onto kelim or into another keli, bein al gabe karka, or you could wash directly onto the ground. Says the Mishnah Berurah, cut 9 bays, noitlim mayim rishonim. Says the Mishnah Berurah, this means tahainu mayim shelafnei hamazayin. This means Netillas Yadayim mayim, that you wash in preparation before the suda, ula afuke mayim achronim, and this stands in contrast to mayim achronim that you wash after the suda before benching. Ukitl kaman Siman Kuf Pei Aleph Sif Beis, where we'll see B'Yetz Hashem in Siman Kuf Pei Aleph that there are certain restrictions what you're allowed to wash onto when it comes to mayim achronim. Okay, so far the voice is holding up. I think I better tone it down a little bit. And let's go into Siman Kuf Samach Gimel. Siman Kuf Samach Gimel. Din Misha Ein Lo Mayim. The halacha that pertains to somebody who does not have water for Netillas Yadayim, and he wants to sit down and be kaveh su'ud ala pas. V'hamachel la'acherim. Also the halacha that pertains to somebody who is feeding somebody else. Uboy bei se'ifim, and here we have two se'ifim. Says the Mechaber. Now, the opening halacha here of the Mechaber is speaking about somebody who's traveling. Okay? So you got in the car in New York and you're driving to Cleveland. And you packed salami sandwiches with you for the trip. But you forgot to bring water. Okay, you're in the car, you've been driving for 2 hours, for 3 hours, you're hungry, you want to pull over on the side of the road, you want to eat your salami sandwich, you have no water to wash the Netillas Yadayim. Vas tutman. What do? Says the Mechaber, Sif Aleph. Im ein mayim mitzuyim lefanov. If there is no water, if you're sitting in the car, you look on the map, you look on Google Maps or on Waze, and you're looking at your route ahead, right? You're driving on Route 80 towards Cleveland, and you look ahead on your route, and looking on your route, you don't see, now this is pretty far-fetched nowadays, but you don't see anywhere ahead of you where you have a reasonable expectation that you're going to get water for a distance of berichuk yoser me'arba milin, a distance exceeding 4 mil. Now, what's 4 mil? 4 mil is somewhere between 2.5 miles and 2 3/4 miles. That's what it is in distance. In time, it's 72 minutes. Now, what do I mean by time? Well, when Chazal use the distance of 4 mil, which there's another name for that, it's called a parsa. Walking, we assume that it will take somebody approximately 72 minutes to walk a parsa. And we're going to see from the Biur Halacha that the time factor is very important to us nowadays when we drive. So again, somebody's in the car. He wants to eat his salami sandwich. He has no water. So says the Mechaber like this. If he looks ahead on his route and he doesn't have any reasonable expectation to come upon water within 4 mil, okay, ula acharav mil. And if he looks behind him, in other words, he'll make a U-turn and he'll drive back to get water. But he has no reasonable expectation of getting water if he makes a U-turn and he goes back for the distance of a mil. Now, a mil is somewhere, it's a little bit less than 3/4 of a mile, and it's a time of 18 minutes. So I'm going to give this to you in minutes, because the Biur Halacha is going to tell us that really for us, it's the time that's the geya. In other words, when Chazal used these measurements, they weren't talking so much about distance, they were talking about how much time it's going to take. So you're in the car, you're driving to Cleveland, and you want to eat your salami sandwich. You look at the map, and you say, if I continue driving, and I go for another 72 minutes, I don't see that I'm going to find water. All right, so there's no water to be had 72 minutes ahead of me. Maybe there's water to be had 18 minutes behind me. I look at the map. I don't see water 18 minutes behind me. Then, says the Mechaber, going to the top of Samach Hamad Aleph, Yitel Yadav b'mapa, then we give you a big kula. What's the kula? Now, literally, the words over here mean, Yitel Yadav, he should wash his hands b'mapa with a cloth. The Mishnah Berurah says it's not what it means. It means wrap your hands with a cloth, v'oichel pas, and you could sit down and you could eat your sandwich, or you could eat something that you eat by dipping into a liquid, which, if you remember, we learned earlier that there is a halakhic concept that when you eat something that you dip into a mashke, you need Netillas Yadayim. So let's just wrap up this first halacha here of the Mechaber. We have a fellow who's in a bind. He's got his salami sandwich. He wants to be kaveh suda la pas. He has no mayim to wash the Netillas Yadayim. And over here, specifically in this Mechaber, we are referring to somebody who's traveling. Now, okay, you're traveling. You're on the way to Cleveland. You're hungry. You want to eat the salami sandwich now. So we don't tell you, oh, you don't have water? Wrap your hand in a mappa and eat. No, that's not what we tell you. We tell you, look, you're traveling. Right now, you don't have water. Keep on traveling. Maybe you'll come upon water. Okay, how far am I mechuyev to keep traveling and not eat? Do I have to drive all the way to Cleveland? When I get to Cleveland, I know I'm going to have water. So do I have to drive another 5 hours? You're not going to let me eat for 5 hours? I got to wait till I get to my destination? No. The halacha gave it a time frame. The halacha said, you know how far you have to go? 4 mil. If you keep traveling for 4 mil, if you keep traveling for 72 minutes, an hour and 12 minutes, if in that time you'll come upon water, then we're not going to give you a kula. Travel for another hour and 12 minutes, come upon water, wash over there, and eat your salami sandwich there. Okay, guy looks at the map, says, I don't see that I'm going to have water. I looked on the map, it says that all the rest stops between here and 72 minutes from here have no plumbing, they have no running water. I don't see, and there's no hotel. Again, in our reality, it's hard to imagine this. You stop at a gas station. But fine, you're in Montana. And people don't realize, you go to a place like Montana, you could drive 4 hours without seeing anything. So the guy looks, he says, I don't have any reasonable expectation that if I continue on my trip for an hour and 12 minutes, I'm going to come upon water. So then we say, okay, fine. But there's another option. Make a U-turn and go back. Okay, guy says, all right, fine. Let me look at the map behind me. Now, we're not going to be matriach you to go to make a U-turn and go back out of your way as much as we tell you to go forward. As long as we're telling you to go forward, so we're telling you continue on your travels. So the halacha is nicha, is willing to tell you continue on your travels for 72 minutes and wait to eat the salami sandwich over there if you're going to get water. But if to be matriach you to make a U-turn and go back, now you're going out of your way. So the halakha is not matriach you as much going back as going forward. How much are we matriach you to go back? Up to 18 minutes. Up to 1 mil. That's how much we'll be matriach you to go back. Guy looks at the map. He says, there's no water 1 mil behind me. So there's no water 4 mil ahead of me. There's no water 1 mil behind me. In that case, halacha says, we'll give you a kula. What's the kula? Yito yad b'mapa v'oichel pas. Wrap your hands and eat with covered hands. So we don't have to worry that your unwashed hands are going to come into contact with the food. That's the halacha that we're learning over here. Let's see the Mishnah Berurah, and then let's poke into the very important biur halacha. Says the Mishnah Berurah here back on Netillas Yadayim Beis. Mishnah Berurah is cutting off. Imein mai. Kasa b'yam shel Shlomo. The Yam shel Shlomo writes, the oisan shenoitlin Yadayim balachas ha'asavim. There were people that came up with this idea that when they were traveling on the road and they had no water, they would go to the grass that was wet from the dew in the morning, and they would get their hands wet from the dew, and they would try to do like a Netillas Yadayim with the dew. Now that's not Netillas Yadayim. You're not washing from a keli. Netillas Yadayim has to be from a keli, and you're not washing with a revius. You don't have a keli that's machzik or revius, so this does not meet any of the requirements of Netillas Yadayim. Technically, if you had a keli and you could somehow scoop up a revius of dew and deposit a revius of dew into a keli, you could wash the Netillas Yadayim with dew. That's not the problem. The problem over here is you're not washing the Netillas Yadayim. You don't have a keli. So that's not the Netillas Yadayim. So therefore, the Amshel Shlomo says, people who do this, not only it's an ineffective, it's an avera. They are considered people who are being mizalzel. They're treating Netillas Yadayim in a disrespectful manner, and it says bad things about such people. It says that they can come to anius. V'gam berchasa levatoli, and if they make a bracha, it's a bracha levatola. Shein zen netila kolikar, because it's not a Netillas Yadayim in any way, shape, or form. Ice cut bays mitzuyim. If there isn't water to be found 4 mil ahead of you, and there's no water to be found 1 mil behind you, says the Mishnah Berurah, aval kishamayim mitzuyim. But if there is water to be had 4 mil ahead of you, or there is water to be had 1 mil behind you, then asar af b'mappa. Then you're not allowed to use this kula of wrapping your hand in a mappa. So you're in the car with the kids, and you decide it's time to eat the salami sandwiches, and there's no water to be had. You can't turn around and say, okay, we don't have water for the Netillas Yadayim. Everybody put your hands in plastic bags. No, you can't do that. You're only allowed to take advantage of this kula if there's no water to be had within these shiurim of 4 mil ahead or 1 mil behind. Why? Because we have this halachic concern that even though you're covering your hand, you have your hand in a bag and you're eating, and then you forget yourself, and it's very uncomfortable having your hand in a bag, so you're going to take your hand out, and you're going to end up touching the food with unwashed hands. Ice cut and gimel, lafanav barichik yoser, if there's no water to be had ahead of you for 4 mil, Ritzayna loymar, what the Mechaber wants to say over here is, we're talking about a case, kishaholich b'derech. Somebody's traveling on the road, mishaer, and he reasons, in other words, he thinks this out, and he's mishayer, shaloyim tzamayim af barichik yoser me'abah milin. He, like I said, he thinks to himself, where am I going? Okay, I've traveled this road before, so I know that for the next 2 hours I'm going to be driving on an empty highway with no exits and no rest stops. So reasonably, I don't see any reasonable hope of getting water. V'hu writes a lechol, and he wants to eat. Oz, he tira lechol al yedei krichas mapal yadav. If he thinks this through, and he has no reasonable expectation, in other words, it doesn't have to be mamish of adois, reasonable. He doesn't have a reasonable expectation of finding water 4 mil ahead of him or finding water 1 mil behind him. In that case, then we give him this kula to eat with a mappa. But if he looks ahead on the map and he realizes that, you know what, there's a rest stop an hour and 15 minutes away. I'm saying an hour and 15 minutes. I think an hour and 15 minutes is called tekif akar arba milin. Very close after 4 mil. Then he has to wait until he gets to the rest stop to eat the salami sandwich. Ula achrav, and as far as behind him, that's a much bigger tircha. We're telling somebody to turn around and go out of his way. Sagi b'shir mil. That's enough, a shear of a mil. If he's mishired that he's not going to find water 18 minutes behind him, mutar al yedei mappa, he could be makel and he could eat with a mappa. Because the Achrayim right, to hu adinim mesupik. Same halacha applies if somebody has a suffix. Shema lo yimtza mayim lefanav b'shir arba milin ula achrav mil. The guy's not dead certain. He's not 100% certain. I know, bevada, I'm not going to get water. Oh, he's besupik. I don't know. I'm driving on Route 80. I was never here before. I have no idea how frequently the rest stops are. I don't know where I'm going to get water. So the guy is a bona fide suffix. Whether he's going to find water 72 minutes ahead of him or 18 minutes behind him, and he's hungry to eat, he's allowed to eat with krichas hamapa. Continues the Mishnah Berurah, and he says, "V'shoimrei ginois upardesim." watchmen who are charged, they have a job. They have to watch over a garden, or pardesin, or an orchard. If they have a sandwich that they want to eat and they have to go get water, a hired watchman is only mechuyev to travel 1 mil, either way, either in front or behind. He's only mechuyev to travel a mil, because they have an obligation to their employer. They're not allowed to walk away from their post for more time than that. The Chayyadam and other Achreidim agree. And this is where now we have the halacha. Till now we're talking about you're in the car, you drive to Cleveland. Now we have the halacha. What if you're sitting in your house? What if you're sitting in your house and something happened and the water has been shut off and you don't have any water? You want to eat lunch and you have no water. What do? Says the Mishnah Berurah, the Chayyadam and other Achreidim agree. The Kol Ayoyshe Bebeisai, anybody who's sitting in his house, he's not traveling at all. Gam Kein Eina Mechuyev L'Trayach HaChamayim, he's not mechuyev to be matriach to go find water, elapachos mimil, only up to a mil distant from his house in any direction. K'mayim la'achrav, similar to a traveler who's being asked to go backwards. Tarak l'fanav baderech, it's only a traveler who's traveling anyway. Shahaylich belav hachi l'sham, a traveler, he's going in that direction anyway. You're traveling. So then it's richu lahamtan al arba milin. Somebody who's traveling and he's going that way anyway, so we tell him wait 72 minutes if you're going to have water. But when you're sitting in your living room, you're not traveling. You're not going anywhere. So then we're not going to be matriach you to go more than a mil distant from your house in order to find water for Netillas Yadayim. Ice cut and dalit, the words of the Mechaber were Yital Yadav B'mapa, which we said literally means wash your hands with a cloth. Says the Mishnah Berurah, that's not what it means. Tzarech Lamer Yolot. The word Yital should be taken out. It really should be Yolot, or Ritzayer Lamar, which means to say Shekayrech Yadav. Yolot Yadav means to wrap your hands. B'mapa, ice cut and hay, ay b'shum davar. It doesn't have to be literally a cloth. You can wrap your hand in anything. You can put it in a plastic bag. Vayin b'Biur Halacha, he says, take a look at the Biur Halacha, the Ladasa Mechaber, according to the opinion of the Mechaber, b'staber the tzarech likrach shtei yadav dafka. According to the Mechaber, you have to wrap both of your hands. Da'af she'oichel ba'achas, even if you'll say, you know what, I'll eat only with my right hand. So I'll put my right hand into a bag, and I'll eat with my right hand, I'll leave my left hand alone. No. According to the Mechaber, he says, yital yadav. Yadav is plural. You have to wrap both hands. Even if you're going to say, I'm only going to eat with one hand. Because even if you're going to say, I'm only going to eat with one, maybe you'll end up touching the food with the other hand. According to the Ramah, we didn't see that Ramah yet. According to the Ramah, there's room to be makel. Let's say you could decide, I'm only going to eat with the right hand, let's say, and only wrap the right hand. V'tzarech iyun needs yoser iyun. I'm not going to do ice cut vav right now. We're going to leave ice cut vav for tomorrow. You know what? I wanted to do the Biur Halacha, but I see that we're already at 43 minutes, and I'm pushing afraid that if I keep on going, tomorrow I won't be able to talk, I won't be able to say shir. So I'm going to cut it over here. Mirz Hashem will see these very important Biurei Halacha tomorrow. Thank you so much for joining me for limud HaTorah. Achenu kol beis Yisrael anasunim batzara ubashivya ha'imdim bein bayam u'bein bayabasha hamaki birachem aleim v'yitziei mitzara l'rvacha me'afela la'oira u'mishibud l'geula me'afela la'oira. Could you imagine those dark tunnels 100 feet underground? Me'afela la'oira u'mishibud l'geula hashta b'agala uzman kariv v'nayim haramin. The Rebbe should be making a ganz Klal Yisrael. We should be zeicher to see the Bias Girl Tzedek Geula Shlema, but Meherav Yabeinu Amen. Be well.